Sonia, a designer, hand letterer, and illustrator. Today I want to show you how to use 3D effect in your lettering and how you could use the same technique in any lettering style such as sans serif like this one, or you can even do the same thing with a scripted style as well. Okay, so how you do that is, so this is the piece, part of the piece that I created for one of the Instagram posts I did. It's this one right here. And then we're just gonna use that word time, and I'm gonna show you how to create this effect. So before I do that, I just wanna break down some of the elements that you need to know. And again, this is true for any kind of 3D lettering style. The only difference would be what kind of textures you use, in which direction is the 3D showing, but pretty much basically these are the elements that goes into all 3D lettering. So the first thing is you will need to have the letter and then the 3D effect and the shadow. For the shadow, sometimes you could just go ahead and use those two, but I personally like to use the shadow because I feel like that extra touch kind of gives more of that 3D effect. Okay, so again, if I show you in the sans serif here, I have the word time. So this red part or the orange part will be the letters, and then we have the 3D component, and you could see the shadow component. Same thing for a scripted style as well. Again, it's the same concept. We have the white, just different colors. We have the white letter part, we have the orange 3D part, and you could see the shadow part. So for today, I'll just demonstrate how to use it in sans serif. Okay, so the first thing you will need is the letters. So here, I'm just gonna use white for demonstration purposes because it's a little bit more easier in the eyes. So we would have this letter, so that we did the first step done. Now the second thing we need is a 3D component here. So what you're gonna do is you are going to duplicate this layer, swipe to the left, duplicate. So now we have two of the times. So we are gonna create, one is gonna be the letter and the other one's gonna be the 3D layer below that letter layer. But before we do that, I'm gonna change the color because it's a little bit easier to see. So to do that, I'm gonna turn off this layer, select the second layer, and then we're gonna choose the color. So I'm gonna hold down onto this dark green, and we're just gonna color drop it. Okay, just like that. Okay, now I'm gonna turn back the first layer, and then below it, we have this one. And you can see in this case, the 3D effect is going this way, to this direction, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and move that green, the dark green time to that direction. So I'm gonna select it, and then we're gonna go this way. So again, the further you go, the thicker the letter is gonna be. So you could go shorter, that'll be thin. So I'm gonna be around here. Okay, so once you're done with that, I'm gonna just color it in, just connect the dots to make it into a complete 3D. You can use any brush you want. I'm using Inking Studio Pen in this case. So again, all you need to do is connect the dots here to here. Okay, so that's it. So now we have created the letter part, we have created the 3D part, and we need to create the shadow part. So the method I used to create the shadow, I learned it from Ian Bernard. He has a tutorial, more extensive tutorial YouTube video on that. I will link it below. He talks about like 3 different ways to create a 3D lettering. For me, I use one of his technique only on creating shadow, and I'll show you how to do that. So again, we're gonna go back to our white main letter layer, and I'm gonna duplicate that again. And now we're gonna play with this one to create that same effect. So what am I gonna do is I'm gonna turn off this layer, and I'm gonna change the color for this one as well. So I'm gonna choose something a little bit darker, so I'll just go with this color here, like blackish, and we're gonna change color, just like how we did before, like this. Okay, now if you look at the shadow, it is going to this direction, right? 3D, we were going this direction. Shadow, we're gonna go the opposite direction, but instead of moving it like this, what we're gonna do is we're gonna select this and we're gonna go here in this adjustment panel, and we're gonna choose something called motion blur. So what this does is it's going to create the blurriness through the motion that I'm taking. What do I mean by that? So I'm gonna go ahead and go this way. You see how it's getting blurry, but if you look at the direction, so I'm going this direction because that's where I want to go. I'm going to go that direction. And then again, the distance will determine your thickness. So let's say I'm going to go about this much, right? So I have that. But the problem is it's very blurry, right? So you can't see that. So before we even apply this into our lettering, we want to make this a little bit more clear like this. So the way you do it is select that. Okay, actually go here and then click on that layer, and then there's an option where you could select. So we're only selecting that element, and I'm gonna go back to my brush. Honestly, I don't think it really matters how what kind of brush you use, but the bigger it works, the better. So I kind of created this big studio pen. Just make it to a maximum so it's easy to color. Because the concept here is we're just gonna color it on top of that blurriness to make it more clear. So like this. So see how it gets a little bit more clear? You can see that. You just do it again. If you repeat, it gets a little bit more clear every single time. Like that. And then try to get the edges, because sometimes edges are really blurry. Just gonna go ahead and do this. Okay. Okay. Now it's a little bit more clear, right? So if you look at the ordering, the letter layer will be on the very top. Below that will be the 3D layer, and below that will be the shadow layer. So now what I'm gonna do is go to the layer, and now how we have the letter on top and then the shadow is in the middle and then 3D. So I'm just gonna move this. So this has to go below, okay? Now I'm gonna turn on my first layer here. So it doesn't look nice right now. So here we have the top layer, we have the 3D layer, and we're just gonna go ahead and adjust the shadow layer to fit there. So all you have to do is go select that, and we're just gonna move it so that it becomes like this. It has to have that nice shadow right under the 3D around here, right? Just like that. It still doesn't look natural, right? The reason is we are gonna go ahead and play with the blending mode. So how do you do that? So we're gonna go select that layer. And if you see here, N just means normal. So click on that. And then we're gonna do multiply. Multiply option. Multiply just means it's gonna blend with any layers on top or the bottom. It's just multiplying that, okay? And so that's one thing, so you have to multiply. And now we're gonna play with the opacity. Lower it, see if you could get lower, it's a little bit more natural. Like that. And then I can adjust slightly little, like that. And ta-da! It looks like that, right? So that's how you do. Again, that's all you need. We have one layer that has all the letters, the second layer that has a 3D component, and then the last layer where the shadow is. Before I call it a day, there's one last thing you want to do to make it look even more nicer. Now, what that is if you look at these lettering, think of this as a block. If this was a block, and in this case, light is coming from here because it creates a shadow on the other end, that means there's gonna be some areas where there's more light versus not so much. What do I mean by that? If you look at this wording here, time, you could see, if you see the 3D part, some of the areas here. So again, if you think about where the light is coming from, probably light is gonna hit here, but not so much here. So you see how I made this part a little darker? And also same concept, if the light is coming here, it will hit here so it's lighter, but the bottom part of it will probably be not as light. So making that distinction adds that extra 3D effect, looking more nicer. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. So far we have everything, right? We have the letter layer, we have the 3D layer, and we have the shadow layer. The first thing is, again, if this is something that you've never done before, just take some time to think about where the light is coming and where it should hit, and where would be more shadows. But once you practice, it will get a lot easier. So again, I explained it on the T. So we know this part, and this part will probably be darker than this area here where the light is hitting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and choose a darker color. So I think I'm already in a darker color, like a black, like this color here, about that color. We are gonna create a separate layer. We're gonna work on top of this 3D. So remember how we had a letter layer, 3D layer, and then a shadow layer? So we're gonna go ahead and work on the 3D layer. And we are going to create a layer on top of the 3D layer. And we're gonna use what's called a clipping mask. So again, I kind of briefly explained, clipping mask is basically, it will only color on top of the shape below it. So in this case, we have time and it will not go over it. So again, for example, in this case, we have a 3D. So if I were to color, on the clipping mask layer, it will not go outside that shape. So we're gonna use that, but instead of coloring everything, we're just gonna color the areas where the extra shadow was needed. So in this case, I'm gonna go back and change it to my regular studio pen. It'll be here, right? We know this part is gonna be darker, and then, this, and then this part, like that, and then the bottom part. Okay, same thing here for I. It's similar to T, right? So we're just gonna do here. So continue doing that for the rest. Okay, that's it. But again, if you look at it, it's a little harsh. So same concept with the shadow. All we're gonna do here is play with the blending mode and opacity. So go back. We're selecting that clipping mask here. Again, N just means normal. You change that to multiply, lower the opacity, the more natural it's gonna look. So look at now. And there you go. I hope this was helpful. If there's anything else you wanna see, let me know. Any comments are welcome. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. This is a great way to support me so I can create more for you. Thank you.